Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today's guest is the one and only Michele Graglia, hailing from none other than Italy, of course. And this right here is someone that I've looked up to for quite a number of years now, Michele, as you've and your TED Talk in specific is really telling about who you are as an individual. And just to give people a little synopsis of what I've learned about Michele just from that talk and following him over the years as I've had. So Michele came here from Italy. How many years ago, Michele?
I moved to the States in the fall of 2007. So we're talking about 14 years
So
ago.
14 years ago,
Roughly, yeah.
picked up everything, left his whole family, as he just shared with me, which is extremely courageous. And through some crazy divine works of God, became a model in Miami and lived a rock star lifestyle of success, partying, fame, the whole nine yards. And then he had a big realization that, yes, I have everything in the external world, but my internal world is empty.
You got it right.
And then he became what he is now, and which is one of the, in my opinion, the greatest ultra marathon runners in this generation. And currently, just won the MOAB 240 in the summertime. That wasn't a summer, right? Man,
It was October.
the days
So
are flying by, Michele. Don't mind me.
I know, yeah, no, it's all good.
2020 is like zero. But anyways,
Absolutely.
he not only that, but won Badwater as well.
Yep, the
Which
couple
is
of years, 2018, yeah.
in 2018, which is notorious as being the hardest race in all of the world. Not only that, but Arctic races and all of these through the Sahara Desert in Morocco, which I was there, so I could attest how beautiful that is.
Stunning, yep.
Unbelievable. And just a man who inspires people. For me personally, Michele, you inspire me so much because you weren't always the great runner.
No, absolutely not.
No,
I was actually
so,
living a very, I would say almost an opposite lifestyle.
right. So as a person who kind of lived a similar lifestyle growing up, in which I didn't think much of myself in terms of being an athlete. I didn't think much of myself as a person in general. As I grew up facing bullying and racism, you give people like me back in the day hope to know that no matter where you are now, if you feel that internal void, you don't need external things to try
You can
to fill.
transcend your circumstances.
Right. And before we start, Michele, I'm going to read the quote for everybody. And this is going to be the topic of conversation for today. So
let's dive in.
Here we go. Where did it go, baby? We lost it. All right. So the quote is, the most important exploration which faces mankind and you personally today is not the exploration of outer space, but the exploration of inner space. So Michele, help us understand this a little. I just want to start by talking about your story, talking about Michele Graglia, not only the runner, but the person and how you got to where you are now.
Yep. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Well, if we want to dive straight into my journey, my story, as you just said, I grew up, I was born and raised in Italy. I come from a background in business. My family has a floral export business. And for several years after the studies, I started working in there. And, I lived what many would consider, a privileged position, because of course, I started off, as a salesperson, and I got the great fortune of, having the opportunity to travel the world and going and seeing customers. And, I made a pretty good, I had a very great start, 20, 21, 22 years old. I was already, making decent money. I was enjoying the good life back in the old country. Then it came, it's almost like, it's one of those situations that you find yourself in life where you always want more, right? And so I came to the understanding that, I was, living a great life there, but I wanted to do something for myself. So I packed my stuff, I, sold my things over there, and I venture into the unknown, if you will. And I decided to take a little time out here. And so I moved to Florida, and specifically Miami initially, to, well, first of all, to improve the English and perhaps expand the business, because Miami at the time was one of the main port of entries for us. And, it's one of those sliding door situations where, I found myself in the right spot at the right moment. And by chance, I got scouted by a renowned modeling agent. And, she offered me a contract on the spot. And that day, my life changed like that. I was living a life, and all of a sudden I was, I was hit by this wave, and and I lived a life that I would have never imagined. So, I was 24 years old. We're talking about 2007 at the time. And I started, I was living in South Beach, and I started living this crazy lifestyle, doing, modeling jobs, and, getting, uh, I would like to, I could say, completely almost overwhelmed by the lifestyle that comes with it, because of the parties and celebrities and everything, that comes along. I gotta tell you, you're 24, 25 years old, felt like being the king of the world. Everything is handed out to you. Wherever you go, everybody knows you. Everything is given, everything is free. And, you live the life that you see in movies. And it's in many ways, it's the one that, at least in our younger years, is put in our heads as the goal, the thing to pursue, the success, the, hanging out with the celebrities and living that fancy, glamorous lifestyle. It was fine for a year or two. And then, then there have been a few episodes that brought me to the realization that that life just wasn't for me. I was, I went through, I would say, the most critical time in my life, where I just couldn't find purpose, fulfillment. I was severely dissatisfied, despite, having all the things that should have made me happy. At that point, I already moved to New York. So I left Miami, I moved to New York to pursue modeling at the highest level. And even, despite working with the biggest names and brands in the industry, it just kept spiraling down. And it's right, change is only possible when you're in the most critical moment, the most critical time. It's usually say, once you reach the bottom, there's only one way, and it's up. And so that's when I, stumble upon a book. And that book, in many ways, not only changed my life, but I often say it saved it. And that book was Ultramarathon Man by Dean Karnazes. He showed me a whole new world. He opened my eyes to a discipline that I didn't know existed. I knew marathons. I had no idea what ultramarathons were. And the whole concept of pushing beyond your physical limits to explore your inner self, to explore your, it's only if you venture past your limits. You got to reach for your limits before you can actually go beyond them, right? And so that journey fascinated me to the point that I was hooked, and I was willing to give it a try. And, first race I did was 100-miler. Some might say recklessly. I can say I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. But in 6 months' time, I went from being a non-runner to, training focused and towing the line for 100-miler. 84 miles in, I passed out, took away on an ambulance. The thing that sucks a little bit, the fact that I was in first place at the time. And so with that understanding of, of being in that position, of exploring my realm, and understanding that if I dedicated myself, I could be good. Because at that point I wasn't elite. So I was like, okay, it's not just like I'm giving it a wild shot. No, this is a confirmation that this vision could become a reality. And so since then, it's been a life purpose. And now we're here.
Yeah, Michele, and I want to touch on a couple of things. The first is, what do you think, in your opinion, made you want to start to look for something more? At what point did you realize that this is enough? Because in order for you to start, there's a good quote I like, that change is only possible when the desire to change is greater than the desire to stay the same.
Totally.
At what point in your life do you feel, was there a moment, was there an experience, an instant where you realized that I want to do something greater? And then how did you, because when people think of ultra marathons, 99% of people that I meet are like, no way. You saw the book. You saw the book and you were like, way, let's
Oh,
do it.
absolutely way.
So, number one, was there an experience or a time where you had an epiphany or something of the sort? And then number two, what was it about ultra running in specific that got your brain thinking, okay, I definitely want to do this?
Yeah. Well, um, let's say that the epiphany came on a spring night in 2009. That was the time where it was a specific moment, and I was literally on the edge, and you can catch my hint right there. I was, very much at the verge of, it's often it's very tough to talk about, contemplating suicide or contemplating, the meaning of your existence. And, as philosophical and deep as it may sound, I think that we all come to face these questions. It's just very hard to talk about it. I think a lot of people think about it, but it's very hard to open up. And I think that, it's right at that moment when you are facing the deepest fear, your deepest fears in many ways. And as I said, once you reach the bottom, there's only one way to get out of it, and it's picking yourself up. So that was the moment where I realized that life wasn't for me, and that I needed to make a change, because the option of ending it there wasn't an option. It was a contemplation of being in that situation. So I never actually acted on it, but there was the thought. And that thought brought me to explore my realm, my network, my brain, myself, my soul, my heart, whatever we want to call it. And that's when I started researching. And that's when I eventually discovered Dean's book. And that's the moment where it was almost like a light bulb, it was like one of those striking moments that is like, oh, this is it. For whatever reason, I never done anything. I never ran more than a 10K when I was like in, cross country 12, 13 years ago, when I was 12 or 13 years old. So over that time, reading that book, I very much connected to his words, to what he was saying. For whatever reason, we came from different life paths. He was a successful businessman. I was coming from a fashion world, which is, completely different, but we reached the same realization. Once you have all the material gains, you reach the material success and you live the life that you thought was going to make you happiest, you just realize that that's not the answer. And so in many ways I related to what he was saying. And within me I said, if it worked for him, it could work for me. It just inspired me to the point that I left everything behind, bought a pair of shoes, and started running laps in Central Park. At the time living in New York, I ran through the cold, bitter cold of the winter, and started making, a conscious decision to dedicate myself and, go for it wholeheartedly. And that, as I said, that changed my life completely.
That is so powerful. And I hope that everyone listening to that can understand that. And I can relate in one way, in the fact that the greatest thing that ever happened to me was going through everything that I went through as a child, facing racism, bullying.
Yeah.
Because if I was willing to, but a message to everybody listening, and I know that this is the same mentality that you have. If you're willing to endure the worst things that you're going through in your life, on the other side is the person that you're supposed to become.
Yeah. You can use that as your fuel as well.
Right.
You can absolutely do that. And it's very powerful.
Yeah, and you're a living testimony to that, Michele, and I hope you notice that. I know you do. And there's one more quote I wanted to throw in there, that your job
Yeah,
is what you're paid for, but your calling is what you're made for.
beautiful.
You
Yes,
know?
it's greater. That's, I think that, you know, one of the I think one of the wrong messages that we are given when we're young is to settle for what makes us comfortable, to settle for what is easier. But there is just misery in that. There is just misery in settling for nothing but your greatest self, discovering your greatest self. And I'm not saying that you necessarily have to run ultra marathons. We can all explore our boundaries. We can all push past our perceived limitations in so many ways in life that can transcend the sport and can become lessons that can be applied in, relationship, careers, whatever. But, taking a step back again, it's the fact that the wrong message is not pursuing your highest dreams, your biggest dreams, your higher vision, rather pursuing money and fame, success, whatever, not understanding that it's the other way around. Because if you do pursue yourself, you do pursue your vision, and you do it at the highest level, dedicating yourself 100% full on, believing that you can do it, money and fame will come naturally. So it's almost like, inverting the paradigm here, understanding that we need to go for a dream. And don't get me wrong, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be full of obstacles and failures and everything, but those are just lessons along the way to reach your success.
Yes, sir. That is amazing. And this next question is a unique question I've never asked anybody before. And
Yeah. All right.
you saying this really propelled me. So, what do you think is the relationship between happiness and fulfillment? And I'll ask you, and I'll tell you why I'm asking that. In my opinion, happiness can be very dangerous, because I feel like when we're stuck in a certain place that's comfortable, we do things that make us happy.
Yeah.
A lot of times, those happy things keep us where we are. Fulfillment, on the other hand, is for a much greater purpose than ourselves. And that self actualization that you were talking about, in my opinion, once again, is only possible if you do something that's greater than just for you. So,
Absolutely
what's
right.
your opinion on that, and the relationship between happiness and fulfillment? Because I hear everybody say, I want to be happy, I want to be happy, I want to be
Right.
fulfilled.
I that's absolutely right. Well, I think that once again, it's always about the societal schemes that we follow, that we are instilled since we're young. You got to be happy. You got to find happiness, the purpose. There, life. We got to start from the understanding that life has no purpose but to live it to the fullest. So happiness is not a goal, but it's an experience of life. Just like sadness, you cannot experience true happiness if you don't also make it through the hard times. And that's when I always connect the experiences in ultramarathons to be a metaphor for life. In ultramarathons, you go through so many highs and lows, so many exhilarating highs and so many debilitating lows. But those lows allow you to actually enjoy those highs, and those highs give you the strength to make it through the lows. So, pursuing happiness, it's not something we should strive for. Rather, understand that it's a fluctuation of our experiences, of our higher experience as life, as existence. Fulfillment, on the other hand, is what gives us purpose. So when you do something that you're truly passionate about and you dedicate yourself, that daily practice to become your better self becomes the purpose itself. So there is the fulfillment of achieving something that gives you purpose, and it kind of circles back around. So every day in my life, now I wake up with a conscious mind, with the understanding that I'm striving to reach my better self. So there is a it kind of propels on itself. You know what I mean? There
Absolutely.
is purpose. Every morning I wake up knowing that my goal today is to push my limits a little further, grow, learn, understand. And in many ways, when you find yourself in that position, you always, because when you actualize yourself at the highest level, then you find yourself in the highest place, which is the one of inspiring others to do the same. And
Yes.
that to me is the highest calling.
Yes. Contribution.
Contribution, that's right.
Because and one thing I've done is I clearly defined my purpose. So I wrote it down the whole 9 yards. But the first thing is to enable others to live principled, centered lives. Contribution is one of those principles for me.
Beautiful.
So, so what do you think about this then? Is purpose something that we can find in the external world, or is it something that we already have inside of us and we just need to explore it?
I think it's innate within us. We can find it outside in the sense of an action or an activity, which is something that we got to explore on the outside. But the seed has to start from within. We can all relate to this. When the first days of school, when we're kids, we often ask, what do you want to do when you grow up? And there's always the guy saying, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a pilot. I want to be a professional basketball player, whatever. But then societal schemes, influences of families and schools and teachers and blah, 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 we are put into boxes. And that's when we start restricting and confining ourselves. So this is when we start losing faith in ourselves. And this is when that seed, instead of getting water, start getting dry, that purpose seed. So we start losing faith. We don't see ourselves being able to do that. So we settle for what's comfortable, what's easy, what gives us security. So we just settle for that job that gives us, the pay, the salary. And that, unfortunately, I'm sad to say, but it's the chain that keeps us caged. And it doesn't allow us to express ourselves, doesn't allow us to pursue our purpose, and eventually find fulfillment.
Yeah, Michele, I hope that you know that you're dropping some bombs here, man. This is
I
just
appreciate it,
awesome.
brother.
I really love it. And what I've noticed since this discussion started is that there seems to be a vast contrast in the life you live now and the life you used to live back then. Because you have both, you have fame now because of your success in the ultra world, and you had fame back then. So you had fame both times, but your internal conversations, your internal
Yeah.
dialogue seems to be so much different now. What have you noticed is different about yourself internally now than then? How do you feel that's different?
I think that at the very core of it is the fact that I am more conscious and more satisfied about the life that I wanted to live. Because as you said, yeah, you can have, I had somewhat, a taste of notoriety and financial success, if you want to say it that way. But it just wasn't my calling. It just wasn't for me. You know what I mean? It's like every day, yeah, I was getting up, I was doing my work, I was still, taking care of my body. I was still, in a way, purposeful, but it wasn't the path that I had chosen. In many ways I got scouted, so it was a great opportunity and I explored it, wide and long. But once I understood what that whole world was about, I just didn't want to be part of it anymore. And I'm not saying, I'm not talking bad about it. And I'm thankful for the experiences I had, because it eventually allowed me to explore myself and find out what I truly wanted to do in my life. But it's just, and again, I'm not talking bad about high fashion. It can be great for many people, but it just wasn't for me. And so that's when the internal exploration begins. You have to listen to your inner voice, dig deep within to truly discover what your calling is, because everyone is different. We all grew up in a different ways and we all have different dreams, but it's fundamental to listen to them and to follow them, because that will eventually allow you to explore your possibilities and find bliss.
So let's talk about that. You finding your possibilities. Let's shift gears a little bit, because
Yeah.
I'm talking to one of the top guys in the world, and I would be stupid to not pick your brain about ultra running. And because I know people are listening and they're like, oh, I kind of want to become an ultra runner now because I think life would be better. So tell me, Michele, if one does want to start ultra running, where is a good place to start? Should I just sign up for a race like I did and then totally destroy my hips? Or what is a good approach in your opinion to step into this world as a beginner?
Well, I would not recommend to follow my my example, going from no runner to running 100 miles. That crippled me for several months, and it took me like 2-3 months to start, walking straight again, almost. So the greatest recommendation that I could give out is to start gradually, to understand where you are, to kind of scan yourself and understand where you are, and then grow gradually, progressively to reach your, whatever goal you set for yourself. Because even running a marathon is no joke. Running ultra marathons require an outstanding level of, patience and dedication, because endurance is only developed through months and months, if not years, of dedicated training. So a lot of patience, and that's the one secret to follow.
Yeah. So what's the hardest race you've ever done? The one where okay, let me put it this way. The one where you've completed the race, but it was the most difficult to complete.
Well, I probably, I would have said up until a few months ago, I would have said Badwater, because, you run through the hottest place on earth. The year that I ran it was the hottest in history. We touched the 130 degrees during the day, and even at night we were in the 125s. So, it was relentless. Though I gotta tell you, that was fast. It was only 24 hours. I would say that as of right now, the hardest experience I had was probably the MOAB, 240 miles. It's a race that I completed in 60 hours. And, for the decision that I made of not sleeping throughout, I experienced crazy hallucinations. Like, I was almost out of, dipping in and out of reality. And I was actually I would say I was managing pretty well until 220 miles into the race, where eventually I tore my right Achilles. So I literally crawled to the finish line for over 20 plus miles.
Wait, so you actually tore your Achilles? Like, seriously?
Yeah, I gotta tell you the truth. Like, when I was at 220 miles in, I had over about 5 hours lead on second place, which was Goggins.
I was tracking that race the whole time.
And I had about 20 miles.
Slowed up a little bit, right? A lot of it because of what happened, right?
Yeah. So 20 miles to go. I had a 20-mile lead, which eventually got shrunk down to about 5 or 6 miles, 7 miles, no more, because I couldn't even walk on it. I was crawling and thankfully I had my sticks, but I only had like a few drops left in the tank, but I was so close to the finish line that I buckled up, and I basically, I forced it through that immense amount of discomfort, and I'm proud to say I brought it to an end.
Ladies and gentlemen, we might be listening to the toughest man on the planet.
I don't know about that, but
that is mind blowing. So talk to me. When that moment hit, and I'm assuming, was it a progressive thing that
it was a snap.
Oh,
and that was the worst thing, because I was at that point,
you were cruising.
I was smelling the hay in the barn. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm on a final stretch. At that point, when you run 210, 220 miles, the last 20, 30 miles feels like, you're right there. Although I still had like a marathon or something to go. But it wasn't a steep uphill. I was pushing hard because I was trying to go for the course record. And just like that, it snapped. And it was one of those moments where the whole world comes crumbling down. I'm like, how I can't even make it to the end here, this turn of the trail. I can't even make it to that tree. How am I gonna make it to the finish line?
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, I had some severe doubts that I was gonna make it, not let alone winning. I was making it to the finish line. But I think those are defining moments where you have to dig deep and find out why you do it. So the why has to be stronger than the discomfort and the pain you're experiencing in that moment. So the motivation that fools you has to be strong enough to overcome whatever obstacle comes your way. And that's in many ways why I think ultra marathons are so empowering. They're so powerful. They're so beautiful. They're so unique because they put you in that situation. You will never experience that in any other moment in your life. But only when you're at your lowest, you can discover your true strength and the will to accomplish what you set out to do.
I can wholeheartedly agree. Is that something that I experienced, as I told you on that 100 that I did, and I have a last man standing run in April on my birthday coming up. So I'm training for that now, which I'm excited about. But tell me, what was your motivation? What was your why to keep going 20 miles, which was how long? And by the way, how long did that take you to run those last 20?
About 14 hours.
Wow.
13, 14. I was crawling. I'm telling you.
I hope people understand what you just said. Wow. That is
so that's a lot of time to being absolute discomfort.
Tell me about, number one, when you got hurt, what was the first thing that came to your mind?
Well, the doubt of not making it.
Okay.
Because I could barely put my weight on it. And then eventually I was like, I'm just going to keep running on it. Eventually it's going to stop. Because that's usually what happens. Yeah. If you override the pain, eventually it stops. So that's an evolutionary thing.
What was your purpose in that moment? Because it's blowing my mind as you're telling me this.
I think that one of the hardest challenges in ultra running, being consistent year after year in ultra running, is being able to reset your motivation, because every year it changes, perhaps even every month or every 6 months, whatever. What motivated me in 2011 when I first started is not the same motivation that pushed me to go for it in 2015, and absolutely different what motivated me last year. So it's always every year, almost like an introspective journey at that level as well, to see what fuels you. So what's gonna push me this year? And I gotta tell you, in the last couple of seasons, it always circles back to pursuing my highest vision of becoming who I truly wanted to become, of experiencing the life that I wanted to live, and ultimately defining my legacy.
Yes, dude, that's unbelievable. And I love how you said that the purpose, the why behind something is constantly fluctuating and changing, evolving.
That's it. That's the right word.
Now tell me about this, because I know that this is something a lot of people want to know. So you have a 20-mile lead on no other than David Goggins, right? The toughest man in the world. This is a title.
I felt the weight on my shoulder. That's for sure.
So you get hurt, and then he closes in within 5 miles of you. And for the first half of the race, it was tight between you two. It was neck and neck.
Yeah. Up until I would say 100 miles, we were, I would say, neck to neck, pretty much. Then there was this one big climb between 100 and 120 miles, which is the halfway point, where I was able to open up a little gap. And then from there, I just kept pushing. And as I said, when I was at 220 miles in, he was sitting at 200 miles checkpoint. So I had a great lead, and I felt confident at that point that I could also get the course record. That's why I was perhaps pushing too much, and that's when I hurt myself.
Right. Yeah. You were just going so hard. Wow. And you were on pace for course record.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Because at that point, I had about 10, 11 hours to do the remaining 38 miles.
Wow. Okay. And if you
which could have been done.
You could have done that, definitely.
Yeah. And I finished about an hour and a half over course record because I tore my Achilles.
What a torn Achilles. God, that is unbelievable, Michele. So tell me, was there in that moment that you got hurt, number one, was there anyone around?
Well, at that point when I hurt myself, I gotta tell you, I got into the race just a month before. I got the race director got me in the last minute, so I wasn't prepared fully in terms of crew and organizing myself with that. So I ran the first 200 miles completely alone.
Oh, come on.
Completely alone. That's why at the beginning, I don't know if you follow the race, but at the beginning we had a decent section where I ran with David.
Yes.
And then we kind of got apart. But basically beside those, we'll say 10, 15 miles we ran together. The rest of the 190, 185, I ran completely alone. So at 202 miles in, there's this Geyser Pass, which is the highest point of the race. And I picked out my pacer. And when I picked out my pacers, he's almost like a second wind. We started running fast. I started knocking down like super fast splits. And that's when I hurt myself. So I was with somebody to answer your question.
Thank God, man. That would have really been bad if you were alone. So
yeah.
Then you cross the finish line, you win the race. Now, what's going through your head as this is happening? As you've won this iconic race, which is it's awesome.
Yeah.
What's going through your head after everything that you just overcame? Is it excitement or on to the next thing? What was it?
Well, when you cross the finish line, it's overwhelming. The emotional toll that you endured throughout 2.5 days out there, it really comes crashing on you in a positive way. There are always tears because you brought to an end, of something that many may think unimaginable, and so just all the, just understanding all the highs and lows that you endured, all the moments of despair and the exhilaration that you lived throughout, it's an emotional release. So that's why it's almost like, even if you're not crying, tears come out.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I experienced that as well. I mean, just even during the race, just like it comes out of nowhere. It's like,
I'm crying. And that's to me is so beautiful. And that's so powerful. And that's why I think we keep going back. We explore, we explore our weaknesses and we discover our strengths. So that puts us in a position of privilege.
Oh yeah.
That only a very small percentage of people in this whole world ever will even taste. And so, crossing the finish line, of course there is, you feel relaxed because you finished. And then there's the enjoyment, the excitement and everything. I kind of soak it up for a minute. I kind of soak it up for it stays with me for a few days, but as you say, then the page turns quickly and it's on to the next.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I want to share a fable with you. It's called the Fable of Aesop's, which he was, back with Socrates, Aristotle.
Yep.
Heard this one?
Of course. I'm very passionate about, I grew up in Italy, Greek mythology is the everyday breath.
Well, listen, you are
bread. Sorry.
You are the boar. Let's tell everyone who the boar is. So there was a fox and a boar that were hanging out. They were in the woods, and the fox looks over and he notices a boar, and he looks at the boar and he says, "Why is the boar sharpening his tusks against the tree?" So he goes and he turns to the boar and he says, "Boar, why are you sharpening your tusks? Aren't you only supposed to do that when danger is near or danger is present or danger is present, excuse me?" And the boar turns to him and says, "Fox, I sharpen my tusks now because when danger does present itself, there will be no time to sharpen them then. So I either sharpen them now or I die."
I'll be ready. Yeah.
Wow. Talk about you, Michele. You're not only training for races, you're training for just life in general. I feel like
Yeah.
mental toughness, people look at as a switch that can just be magically turned on and off.
Yeah.
But by you putting yourself in these uncomfortable situations for 240 miles, I don't even know what's going to be next for you, because I know there's going to be something bigger and better. I know that, Michele. I've listened to you 100 times before, okay? But anyways, so what is your message to people that are living comfortable lives?
That you need to get out of it. It's absolutely necessary to stretch yourself out. I mean, there's like a very famous saying from Thoreau. Is one of my, I want to say one of my favorite philosophers. Thoreau said, "Many men live a life of quiet despair." And this is because the modern lifestyle gave us everything that we want at any, we can, snap our fingers, we can get food delivered at home. We got everything we need. We live in comfort, but it never makes us happy. And the reason, in my opinion, is that perhaps given that, preferring a lifestyle made of comfort and, I would say, false securities, we disconnect from what matters the most. And that's pushing beyond ourselves, risking, failing, learning, and growing. It's about growth. Life is about growth. And that's why I reconnect to what you were saying. It's not about training for racings, but it's training to discover your best self. And that circles back to what we were saying earlier, that gives you purpose. So you create your own purpose going, of course, you have to step outside your comfort zone, and that's never going to be easy, but that puts you in a circle of constant empowerment, self-empowerment. And, I discovered this throughout, of course, a lot of trial and error. And I think that through 2020, there was the great understanding that races cannot be the fuel for what I do. Because in 2020, there were basically virtually no races. And so, and I got to tell you, when it first happened, when it first came crashing down on us, I had a very tough time. For a good amount of time, I was trying to reassess where I was. And since I couldn't use races as fuel, I had to find the clarity of the why I was doing what I was doing. And so this brings me back to having to push beyond yourself, push beyond your limits, and discover your best self. That is fulfillment. That is purpose.
Yeah, Michele, that is sweet, man. You just brought it full circle. You're not the host. You're not supposed to do that. I'm just kidding. That's awesome, man. And you said that beautifully. You tied it all together so perfectly. And that is why I can say, honestly, this is one of the best conversations that I've had. Just the authenticity, the vulnerability.
Oh, man, I appreciate that. Really.
Providing here, not only for me, but everyone else. And the last question that I want to ask is, when Michele Graglia is no longer here, what is the legacy that he hopes or you hope to leave behind? And what is the impact that you want to have on others?
That comes back to legacy. Absolutely. We all have ambitions. We all have dreams, but we're often too afraid to take risks. We all think that we are not good enough, that we're not strong enough, that we're not smart enough, whatever things you want to pursue. We feel trapped in the limits in the box that we're put, right? This is what we're told. This is what you can do. This is what's possible. This is what you cannot do. So we take it for granted. We box ourselves. And, with growing up with that mindset, we inevitably lose ourselves. We lose contact with ourselves, and we begin to feel failure. So we begin to fear we begin to even question the possibilities of to do anything. And that's where we start losing our self-confidence. But I believe that, the message that I want to give out is that I truly, deeply believe that it's absolutely necessary to take risks, to make mistakes even, to learn from them, overcoming your fears, and allowing yourself to live fully. It's not about winning races. It's about living life to the fullest. That to me is the only purpose in life, because it's only, in every step we make into the unknown, whichever unknown we perceive for ourselves, because we all have our perceived limitation, we discover our strengths, our true strengths. And with that, our perseverance to reach those dreams. Does it make sense?
Oh, it doesn't make sense. Of course it does. Man. That's
And here is where it all comes together, is the fact that it is in that process of growth that we'll realize that we're all much more capable of what we always believed for ourselves. So we're all much stronger, much more capable than we could always begin to imagine. And so we begin to evolve. We push towards an always better version of ourselves, a more conscious version of ourselves. And with that, we also become more grateful about the life that we live. So there's no bitterness, there's no dissatisfaction, but there's a sense of gratitude to be able to live fully, to be able to live purposely, to be able to contribute in many ways. And so I would say that whichever direction you want to pursue in life, it's, you shouldn't be afraid to venture beyond your limitations. You got to take that step, because that's what changed my life. I did it, and I couldn't be more privileged to be here to share my story today.
wow, Michele. Grazie per tutti. Thank you for everything.
Grazie a te.
This was just unbelievable. You have such a way of telling your story. It is so impactful. And for me, it just showed, like, even in this hour that we spent together, I'm ready to go out and train right now.
Let's go running.
Well, you're not, the thing that gets me about you, Michele, is that you're not here, yelling at me, telling me to do it, or trying to use that form of motivation. You're just connecting on such a deep level that everyone can understand. Everyone has been there, where they're just so destroyed in life in one way or another, physically, mentally, emotionally. And you are the testimony that on the other side of that is the person that you were supposed to become. So Michele,
you put it perfectly, and I appreciate that.
Of course, I thank you so much for being here. I know how much value this is going to add to people's lives, as it's impacted me on a tremendous level. And I thank you once again for being here. And I need to have you back in the future, Michele. I just need you to
let's stay in touch, and it will be a great pleasure. It's been wonderful to connect today, and I hope that all the listeners, all the followers that are listening to this can get inspired just as much as I got inspired at the very beginning of my journey. So best of luck to all. Pursue your dreams and just keep going.
Michele, where can people find you on social?
I'm relatively active on Instagram. You can follow me at Michele Graglia, Mickey, and then my last name is Graglia.
Perfect. All right, everybody, the man that finished the MOAB 240 with a torn Achilles, Michele Graglia.